afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. This is a very interesting webinar. It's very relevant with the things that have been going on lately in the news in terms of speech and artificial intelligence and all of those pieces. So I think it has something of interest for everyone in this. So let's take a look. If you kind of wonder why we would be doing this, not a lot of people know our history. And we go back quite a ways, and not only as a voicemail company, which is what most people do know us as, but also as a speech applications company. Several companies were rolled together years ago to make this current version of our company, and one of them had been building speech recognition applications for years, even before we rolled together. So we have a 15-year history in the speech recognition market, which is considerable, certainly far more than any of our competitors. And what that gives you, besides some very well-developed code, is a lot of experience in understanding how speech recognition works, how to use it, how to correctly deploy it, how to minimize the pitfalls that some applications have when they try moving to a speech interface. So we think those years of experience help us out a lot and really position us in a way that if you're looking at taking advantage of some of the value of speech recognition, we believe we're a company you should look at. Certainly, we're in the right market space for it. We're a player in the enterprise market, and we've not only been selling call processing, voicemail, automated attendant, but speech applications into those enterprises for over 15 years, and they've taught us a lot. Enterprises, of course, are very complex, and they're all very different from each other. And so you learn a lot of the things they have in common, and you also learn a lot of the different things sort of on a per industry basis. And all that information helps you when you go to design an application. And in the application market, we have a very wide range of solutions that we provide. And some of you attend these marketing webinars regularly, and you know our goal here is not to give you the broad overview of who we are or what we do, but to focus in on some small relevant piece. And in this case, it's going to be our speech recognition applications. But it is good to know that this same platform we're talking about does far more than just these speech applications that we're going to talk about. And it fits into the enterprise world in such a way that we're very comfortable saying whatever you have in your enterprise today, we're going to work along with that. And wherever you're going, whatever projects you have in terms of upgrading your infrastructure, you can feel comfortable that whatever you're looking at here today will move forward with you without any problem at all. We are the recognized leader in interoperability. So if we look at speech recognition in today's business, it's certainly something that's making an inroad. Now, we've been selling it for over 15 years, and I will say in the beginning, it was a difficult sell to get an enterprise to expose anything, certainly to the public, that used speech recognition. The technology was new, wasn't understood, wasn't as active and accurate as it could have been, but there's been a lot of development over those years, and now voice recognition is a powerful way to increase the services you offer your customers and the productivity of your employees. And so we're going to look at a couple of different things here. Our two key offers here in the speech rec world are a speech-enabled automated attendant and a virtual personal assistant for users that is speech-driven as well. And we believe both of these have a place to play in almost any enterprise. And we'll look at sort of how they work, what they do, and talk a little bit about how they could fit into your business. Speech recognition in general has come a long way, as I said, over those years. It's certainly a technology where exposure to it is something that's an everyday thing. It's interesting, there's a new segment out on NPR that recently that talked about Google, who has developed an artificial intelligence interface that can call up and make appointments and schedule appointments, and the users or the recipients of those calls don't know that it's a computer. They've come a long way, and part of that, of course, requires speech recognition, the ability for the computer to take the responses and understand what they are. Now, why that's so difficult and so amazing is because everybody's speech patterns, voices, accents, etc. are different. So there's always a challenge at being able to recognize what a user is saying. And we'll talk a little bit about how we do that as we look at part of our applications. But certainly a speech interface, the first thing it delivers for users is productivity gains. whether it's the fact that there are some applications that you can't do very well over the telephone by dialing them in using DTMF keys, or the fact that it's unsafe to do it that way. All of those sort of play together to make a speech interface perhaps extend the functionality of a product into new areas that give those users more productivity. And it can be used for cost savings. If you can automate an application with speech recognition, you can take more important tasks off of a human operator and deploy those doing things that couldn't be done with a computer. And things are faster with speech. The ability to deploy speech such that you can get calls answered more quickly, or you can get calls answered 24 hours a day, and use that speech rec interface for that solution really leads to an improvement in customer relations, because the more quickly you can service a customer, obviously, the happier they become. And the operational hours extensions is one piece that we talk about to almost every customer. We still have customers who say we do not want to put a speech recognition interface forward to the public as our main interface. But the ability just to extend those after hours so that you have some functionality there, or maybe just internally, all of that is a way to use speech in a business today, and those are the kind of discussions that we have with our customers. If you look at acceptance of the technology out there, probably the one device that's made speech rec more accepted than anything else is the mobile phone. When Siri came out and people started using voice to drive their applications, they learned about it. They learned what worked and what didn't work and how it could be useful, and sometimes they learned what some expectations were unrealistic. But certainly, as it got deployed at an enterprise level, backing up call centers, probably most of you have called an airline and gone through and checked the status of a ticket, or even booked a ticket over the airline, or called your bank and gotten a bank balance by speaking to the computer. As more and more of that happens, the public acceptance for speech recognition goes up. Certainly Alexa has, if nothing else, put it in the news in such a way that the ability to talk to a device to get things done is not seen as science fiction anymore. It's something that's in a lot of people's everyday lives. And people use it on the desktop for dictation and control of devices. So we're very comfortable now that there is no negative impact of having speech. Now it's all about how you deploy it, making sure you deploy it correctly for your particular needs. We have three pieces of functionality that use speech recognition. Two of them are obvious. One of them is a little subtle, I think, but automated attendant is probably the most requested thing in terms of driving an automated attendant in the front end of a product to allow a user to speak a name in a directory and be transferred. And the goal here is to more efficiently handle calls and to free up workload, again, on the human workforce where that can be used more productively elsewhere. So you put the names in a directory and you've got a good start. But as I said, over the years, what we've learned is the kind of things that make this less efficient. And one of those is the fact that not everyone's name is the same in terms of what people call them. So you might call someone Robert Johnson. You might call somebody Dr. Johnson. You might call them Dr. Robert Johnson. People might have a nickname, Doc Johnson. In order to be effective, particularly at an enterprise level, you need to have a wide range of support for alias names, and that's something we've had in our product for years now. And you'll find it a limitation in a lot of the other products who haven't had all the years of talking to customers that we've had. And the other big piece in a speech automated attendant is disambiguation. In any enterprise of any size at all, there are going to be name matches. So you might have 2 John Tylers or 3 John Tylers throughout the company. And when somebody speaks the name, you need to be able to somehow distinguish which one they're looking for. Now, some products we compete with simply, if there's a multiple name match, transfer the call to a live attendant to be handled. But there's much better ways to do that. And we use disambiguation by creating groups of common traits. So we might use the departments, so that when you ask for John Tyler, it would come back and say, do you mean John Tyler in accounting or John Tyler in operations? So that ability to do disambiguation and alias names, very, very necessary for a good experience for the outside caller. And the directory is another piece you have to look at. Most systems do a single directory where anybody in the company, you can say their name and it'll transfer the call. But as we've moved into the enterprise space over the years, it's very typical for us to deploy one of our systems across 5 or 6 locations in different states. And you don't necessarily, when somebody says John Tyler, when they're calling into your Chicago branch, you don't necessarily want them to find all the John Tylers, but just the ones that are there local to Chicago. So to have partitioned directories is very important in a larger, more complex enterprise. And that's something, again, that we've done for a lot of years. I'm going to go to the bottom one first, or next, because the full user interface is the other big piece of functionality that people can gain value from. And this is very simple. When you call into your call processing system, instead of using DTMF commands, it allows you to use speech commands. And this is something that gives you an incredible amount of flexibility, not only in what you can do, because there are things you can do with a speech interface that would be impossible with the DTMF interface, but it also gives you a much needed boost in when you can do it. And probably the biggest piece of functionality that people focus on with this is the huge amount of drive time that we have here in terms of driving to and from work or to and from locations at work. And that's not very productive time. Yes, some people will sort of balance their phone on their knee and try and keep reading their email and staying connected. And not only is that illegal, but it's extremely unsafe. But with a speech interface, hands-free, eyes-free time can be turned into very, very productive time. So the ability to call in and basically interface with this application using speech commands is the next biggest piece that we talk to customers about. And we'll look at the various things that a user can do. The middle one, outside caller interface, is kind of something that you get when you spend a lot of time talking to customers. And the core of this is, if somebody calls into a product with a speech interface and it says, please say the first and last name of the person you're trying to reach, and they say John Tyler, and it goes out, but it can't transfer to John Tyler. John's not available. It pulls the call back. Most systems then switch to DTMF mode, asking the caller to dial digits to do various things. And the problem is, if you were calling from your car, you had your Bluetooth headset in, and now it comes back and it says, press 1 to leave a message, that's really not very effective. So our system is one of the few out there that actually has the ability to implement an outside caller interface. So when that call comes back, we're going to prompt the caller for all the options with speech commands. So it's not only much, much safer, but there's a wider range of options that we can offer easily. So those are our core applications where we've deployed speech recognition. So let's kind of go through some of them in a little more detail to give you an idea of what the experience would be. And we'll start with the speech automated attendant. So this is fairly straightforward. Basically, we have an automated attendant in our system and have had for 30-something years, and it's by far the most flexible out there. We're very lucky that we started our system from the very first day with an open platform, so we've never had to sunset the product. So our product has over 30 years of constant development and upgrade, and it is by far the most feature-rich platform on the market, and none of our competitors even try and argue that anymore. But what we have added over the years are all these advanced applications, one of them, of course, being speech. So we now offer menus that can use speech or can use DTMF or touchtone. And this gives you the ability to route calls 24/7. So here's where you can kind of extend the functionality. Even if you want live operators handling your calls during the day, the ability to still have an option after hours by using a speech rec automated attendant is a very popular one. And that same automated attendant isn't just a directory, isn't just a speech directory for us. It has a wide range of other applications. And all of it is speech driven. So you can offer the caller informational mailboxes. So you could say, please say the first and last name of the person you're trying to reach. For a list of our operating hours, say operating hours. For directions to our facilities, say driving directions. So you actually can give a full and complete experience, all being driven by speech recognition. The system is multilingual capable. You can have up to 5 different speech recognition engines running on the platform at one time. I talked a little bit about the different directories and how handy that is, particularly in larger deployments with multiple sites, but sometimes even group directories are important. So what CXD allows you to do is partition directories, and in a certain menu, when somebody issues a speech command, you're only going to look in that partition directory. So you could have departmental directories, you could have building directories, site directories, functional directories based on the cities where it's hooked up, all of that kind of functionality by partitioning those directories. And they're very flexible. Users can be in multiple directories, and it's something that we've worked out over the years, and large corporations really find it important to be able to match what all their different groups are doing. And talking about large enterprises, of course, the telephony market is a very active one right now in terms of there's all sorts of movement going on. People are moving to the cloud. People are moving to IP phone systems. People are moving to the new combined systems like Microsoft. And one of the things that we're very proud of is we are recognized as the industry leader in telephony interoperability. We connect to every major enterprise product out there and in multiple ways, and that allows you kind of a comfort factor that if you're looking at doing something today, but you know in the next few years your infrastructure is going to change, you can rely on the fact that whatever you have today will work with fine, but will also work with anything going forward. One of the things that we find that are limits in most of the new products today is the ability to schedule different menus based on different times, different dates, different departments, different phone numbers. That is something that the older call processing systems had. If you had, years ago you had an old Octel system, it had a very powerful menuing structure, and it allowed you to really tailor your incoming calls based on what your departments and individuals wanted. And once again, because our product competed back in those days, and we've just been adding features ever since then, we have the most flexible scheduling out there. We have an unlimited scheduling module. So we can send things to different menus based on days, times of dates, ranges of dates, third Friday of the month. Anything you need for scheduling, you're going to find that we're able to do that. And that scheduling is a very important piece. One of the areas where we do extremely well when we're competing with Microsoft is if you use the Exchange Unified Messaging, their scheduling is very, very weak, and you basically end up with one menu during days and business hours and another for after hours. And that's just not enough for large enterprises. They're almost always doing more than that with their existing product. And then we talked a little bit about some of the special features in the Speech Automated Attendant. Individual users can be in the directory or not. Sometimes your CEO may not want to be available through the speech directory in the front end. We support alias names. We have a great setup for disambiguations and group directories. And we have an API for synchronization. If you buy this system only to synchronize, only to use a front-end Speech Automated Attendant, you probably have an existing directory somewhere that you'll want us to synchronize to. And we have a very powerful API that lets us do that. Departmental transfers, everything you could want in a Speech Automated Attendant. So here's sort of what it would look like. Caller calls in, and you have sort of a general prompt. At any time during the screening, you can simply say the name of the person or the department you wish to reach. For a list of departments, please say options. And then that same menu is where you could offer any other function that you have with a speech command. In this case, the caller says John Tyler. System comes back because John Tyler has some of our other advanced apps enabled, and he's doing call screening. And so it now comes back and says, who's calling, please? The caller speaks their name, Mark Reed. One moment, please. And now we're going to go transfer. Now, one of the advantages we offer is all of our solutions. You saw that list of solutions on a page a few slides back. They all run on one platform. Unlike our competition, who tends to add a server with one feature and another server for another feature, and those are not aware of each other, because this is an integrated platform, things like our Speech Automated Attendant is directly linked to our personal call processing application. So this is never a case of where we're just going to blindly transfer the call out and then catch it when it comes back. We're going to be able to do things like, John Tyler maybe has something that says, when I'm working from home, send the call there. And we can integrate all that kind of functionality together with the speech front end. We talk about the outside caller interface. This is a very subtle piece, but it's very important for customer satisfaction. And so when somebody comes and it says, one moment, please, and it transfers, and then it comes back, John Tyler is not available, please say locate, leave a message, try another person or operator. That's all done with speech commands. This isn't to leave a message, press 1. All those things that we offer are going to be easy for somebody who's just started the call using speech recognition, and much safer in most cases as well. One of the impressive pieces that when we show our product or give people demo accounts on our product, one of the things that impresses almost everybody is our full user speech interface. Now, again, there are other products out there that have user interfaces, and these products are 1 or 2 years old, and some of them are actually not too bad. Some of them are terrible, but some of them aren't too bad. But you have to remember, we have over 15 years of understanding what you need to do, what you need to support for a user. So speech recognition is fairly straightforward. It's not a conversation with a computer like people think it is from watching all the movies. It's a simple command and control. At a certain point in an application, there are certain things you can say that the system will recognize, and then it'll take the appropriate action. And that's called a grammar. So there's a grammar at a particular point in an application that defines what can be said at that point. Now, you can make those grammars as big as you want. And certainly you want to make them of a certain size where you catch the obvious things, like get new messages, get my messages. You need to have, sort of wrap around the various ways that people might say a command. But the more commands you put in a grammar, the slower it is slightly, and the more likely misrecognition occurs. So the real intelligence in writing speech applications is knowing how to create grammars. And that's why our 15 years experience makes our product far superior to everything out there. So what can you do with our speech assistant? Pretty much everything you can do over the telephone, plus a lot of new things that are a lot easier to do with speech commands. So you can make outgoing calls. So if I call in from my car on Bluetooth on my drive-in in the morning, I can call anybody. I can dial numbers directly. I can call people in my system or people in my contacts. So I've extended my business world out to my contacts, which makes it much more productive. I can access my messages, both voice messages and email. I can have my emails read to me over the phone. I can access my calendar. I can create a new appointment on my calendar. If I have a meeting request, I can accept or deny it. I can schedule a new meeting and invite not only employees, but members from my contacts, and they'll all get the invitation sent out to them. I can control my availability. One of the things about Personal Assistant is, call completion is really important to us. And the way you make call completion work is you build rules that don't require the user to really do much. So you need to know where the user is, and you need to know if they're in a meeting or not, and what their status is in Skype. And by taking all of that into play, that we can actually control how calls go to the users. But you also need to give the user a certain amount of control. And with a speech interface, it's very easy for them to call in and basically set up how they want their calls to be handled. So what would you like to do? Get new messages. You have 3 unread messages. Message number 1, an email message from Mark Reed. Message subject, the Martin Project. Message body, hi, John, we need to talk about the Martin Project. Call me as soon as you can. It's great to be able to get to your messages over the phone, great to be able to get to your email messages over the phone, but we also give you the ability to process those messages, not just listen to them and say, oh, when I get to work, I have to handle that. With this message, I could say reply, and it would prompt me to record a reply, and I'd record an audio reply. Listen, John, how about we get together today at 3 o'clock? And he basically, hi, Mark, how about we get together at 3 o'clock? He will get an email back with a WAV file attachment he can play, and then if he replies to that, and I'm still in my car and I get that message, I can then go into my calendar and create a new appointment to set that meeting up. So converting drive time into very productive time, safe productive time, is a key piece of what this interface does. Another thing that we do as part of that call completion engine that uses speech is we allow a caller, when they answer a call, to have access to speech commands to do things besides just take the call. So here's a typical call screening session. A call comes in, you answer it. You have a call from Mark Reed. Please say accept call, which will connect the caller to you, which makes sense. Reject call, which will send the caller to voicemail. Acknowledge, which will let you record a personal acknowledgement message. You might say, hey, Mark, listen, I'm in my car. I'll be back in my building in 10 minutes. I'll call you then. And then you can go about listening to your messages or doing what you're ever doing, and the caller hears that personal message. You can choose to transfer the call to anyone else on the system. So this kind of functionality being driven by speech makes it much easier to use, much safer to use. And the whole goal here is to shorten that latency in transactions and increase the productivity of the users. The ability to access the calendar is, depending on how much you rely on your calendar, can be one of the most important pieces there. So the ability to ask for what your appointments are today. And this is something I do typically only once a day, and I'll do it when I'm driving into work. So it's just nice to know, what's waiting for me there. So I'll read a list of my appointments, and then I might go in and reply to one of them. I might accept one of them, things like that. So it's just a great feature to be able to kind of extend a virtual desktop out to you. You know what you're going to do when you get to work in the morning. You're going to turn your email system on. You're going to triage your email. You're going to make some phone calls, reply to some messages. The ability to use that drive time in to do that same kind of triage and message response with a virtual desktop, extremely important tool. Contacts access, this is sort of a funny one to show because I don't think anybody's really ever used it this way, although this works. And what this is doing is letting a user go in and read the information we have with the contacts. So what's the real important point here is when you have our product, you can synchronize your business contacts with our system. And that widens up kind of the user group that you can use with our product. So while you probably wouldn't want to actually go in and read Mark Reed's email address, having Mark Reed access like that means I can send a new voice message to him while I'm driving by recording it and having going into his email address. I can place an outgoing call to him. I can invite him to a calendar entry. So it's really important to extend contacts into this kind of solution. It just makes so much of what you do during the day easier. A lot of different customers have deployed our product, and for lots of different reasons, because we have so many different functions. One of the big ones last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, was Navy Pier in Chicago. Navy Pier is a big kind of retail amusement company that has hundreds and hundreds of different tenants and different shops and restaurants. And of course, people call in all the time wanting to get to the theater, wanting to book something at the restaurant. And they found it very, very easy to deploy a speech front end that would let users basically get out to where they wanted. The other piece they deployed is for their employees, because a lot of their employees aren't just sitting in a main office, they're out and around the property in various places. So the ability for us to find them and locate them and get calls to them while they were working was another real advantage to them. So this was one of the customers that actually came up with some very creative uses for the product. And we were impressed with basically how they took what our product could do and applied it to their business. So we're looking at speech recognition, kind of wondering, why would I want to use this? And probably the biggest piece that people start with is a speech-enabled automated attendant directories. And that's pretty easy to sit down and look at your business and talk about how we could offer better service to your callers, how we could extend your business hours. We've actually had some large enterprises only deploy speech automated attendant for internal callers. The reason being they figured out 40% of the traffic going to their attendants was internal people, basically just calling in by dialing 0 and say, could you transfer me to Mark Reed? So just that alone could probably cost justify what it would cost to put one of these systems in. The personal assistant that's speech rec driven to the mobile workforce, just a huge productivity gain for people. Anybody that has a mobile workforce, we can talk with them and they'll pretty much see the value of what we do. And of course, there's the whole legal issue of whether you can use your mobile in the phone, and those are getting stricter and stricter. But so far, in most states, if you have a hands-free interface, then you're okay to actually use the kind of functionality we offer. And then there's always down, the core bottom line: reduce costs, improve productivity, and customer satisfaction. And I think that's a pretty important one. Some of the callers on these webinars are we market to our base, of course, and so they already have a CX system, and it's good for them to know, they've got the platform in place. Basically, they already have automated attendant. If they're on current software, they already have all the scheduling and the advanced app functionality that we talked about. Speech is now deployed by simply adding speech recognition licenses to the server. We don't dedicate licenses to users, groups, or applications. That whole complete open platform that I talked about means that you put speech rec licenses on there. They're in a first-come, first-served pool, and that allows you to deploy all the applications and using much less in the way of resources to do so. So let's see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, there's a couple questions already in here. Before we get to that, just as a reminder, there was one person who asked about the slides. We will send those out to you via email later today. And just so that you're aware, you're welcome to type your questions in at any time now. We'll go ahead and get started with these couple that are already in the queue. Neil, can you switch back and forth between speech and the phone keypad?
You can switch one way. meaning if you call in using speech recognition, and let's say you're sitting in an airport terminal and you realize it's too noisy, then there's a command that will take you to the DTMF interface. We don't have a way to switch back from the DTMF interface to the speech interface, because most people who have speech, that's where they're going to start. So they tend to get all the choice they need by being able to go back to the DTMF interface. So that is a standard feature.
And I suppose in that case, you could hang up and call back in. Do you get speech again
Sure.
at that point? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, next. I think you covered this. This question may have come in before you got to this slide, but we'll ask it anyway. Can you access the calendar with speech or just the voicemail messages?
No. Once you have the speech interface for a user and you have our personal assistant license, you're now connected to your groupware. And that means you can access the calendar, you can access your voice messages, you can access your email messages, you can use your contacts to send messages and invite people to appointments. So it's a very tight integration with all of that.
Okay. Next, can you tell how many callers are using the speech or DTMF portion of the automated attendant?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things you can do. On the kind of the monitor screen that runs on the server, there's a little line at the bottom that says how many ports you have, how many are active, and how many are using speech resources. And we have a utility that you can run. It's not running normally, but if you're kind of wondering, well, I wonder where I stand with that, you can take that utility and run it for a week, and then it'll actually show you the maximum number of resources used over various times during the day.
Okay. Next, not about speech, but do you offer transcription of the voice messages?
Yes, that's actually a service that we have available. We have two different versions of it today. One version can run on servers within your firewall if you're very, very security conscious, and that one also can run in the cloud. And then we have a second one that runs in the cloud that is a little less expensive and only does English recognition right now. So we have a couple of options for that. And it's our next version of software, we're actually tying that all together so that if you're using unified messaging and putting your messages into email, you will get the transcription and the voice message all as one message, starting with our next version of software. We always appreciate when you take the time out of your day to come to these. We know it's not an easy thing to do, so thank you. And keep in mind, we love to get feedback from you about how these webinars go, or pretty much about anything about our product. As you can probably tell, we love talking about our product. So info@avst.com will get you directly to somebody in our department, and I guarantee you we'll get back to you in a timely manner. So thanks, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.